see if we got live there. There we go. Hello, everybody. It's us again. We're back this Sunday. Good to see everybody. And of course, today I've got with me Robin, Mondo, and Alex. Hi, everybody. It's
Hi, everybody.
There we
Hey,
go.
everybody.
Hi.
So sorry we missed last couple of weeks, or last week. Seems that the trip to Houston included catching some kind of a cold for me, so that had me down for a little bit. And then Jim's down in Houston again, visiting his daughter, and Knox on his way back from Arizona. So Monk was nice enough to join us.
I am here.
And we got Alex back from his long trip across the water. How long was that flight, Alex?
A little over 6 hours going there and a little over 7 hours coming back.
Well, that's not bad at all. It's not bad at all. A little later, we'll let you tell us about your journeys there in London. So I know everybody's always interested about that. So let's see. Not seeing a whole lot in the chat. There we go. Got a few people. That's good. Well, in the last few weeks, we've had quite a few cities that have had local alerts, and I'll just run down some of the lists of some of the ones that have happened in the past few weeks. There was Baltimore, Columbia, Missouri, Lewiston, Maine, Junction City, Kansas, Eden Prairie, Minnesota, Hopkins, Minnesota, Boulder, Colorado, Anaheim. I don't even know how to say this one. Placentia, California, Oroville, California. We had Brighton, Colorado, Northfield, Minnesota, McLeod, Minnesota, Montgomery, Alabama, Olmsted County, Minnesota, Hawaii County, and Washington County, Arkansas, and some that are still up and coming are New Orleans, and they didn't finish up on Madison, did they? They still got some things going in Madison, don't they, Alex?
Yeah, it's been introduced as far as I know. It hasn't moved anywhere, so we've actually got some time.
Yeah. So, if you're in any of those areas, please do contact the vape shops in your area and try to start organizing some type of a response for this. Of course, if you need a packet, we'd be more glad to send it to you. So those are the local actions that we're looking at, and state-wise, we've seen a couple of bills that have been introduced for Texas, and there's still a looming tax bill in Michigan, but with the holidays, we don't expect a whole lot of action on them. So we've had a few occasions where that's not been true. New York City last year, but I don't think they're going to try that on us this year. That's good. Well, they need some work. The Draftsville down in Texas, yep. What we're hoping is there's some groups that are coming together there in the Texas area so that the vendors will actually come together and perhaps get a lobbyist to help, because there's 4 total bills there in Texas. Nope, don't see anything for Virginia. And you can pretty much guarantee that as we go through 2015, we're going to see tax bills in at least 48 states. And the only reason why I can guarantee that is because there's 2 states that have already got taxes. So
That's what it's about now. It's about taxes. You know, we've gone through all the arguments already from the get-go. What I'm seeing a lot now is they don't care about the science. They don't care about the studies. You can pile them up on them. They're looking at money. And all the other stuff doesn't really mean too much to them anymore.
Yeah.
So with the kids, it's all about protecting the kids and taxes. And it's about how it wraps up.
And we see that at the state level, and then at the city level, you've got the issues of the public bans, banning it in the public space or probably out in sometimes outdoor spaces. And again, that's taking away the rights of the individual shop owners to make a decision for themselves. Nobody likes that.
I did want to chime in real quick. We did see a tax bill pre-filed in Virginia. There's not a lot of confidence that it will go anywhere, but at some point we may be, I think, putting it out there that it exists. But it's sort of like the stuff in Texas. It's all pre-filed, and confidence as to where these things will actually go is not great. But
yeah, I don't think a lot of people understand how that particular area of government works when they pre-file a bill. Sometimes the language is not quite finished yet. So what we'll find is actually they'll pre-file the bill, basically give you an intent of the way they're going, and they'll continue to massage the language as they see how the bill is being responded to. So sometimes it's very hard on the preliminary bills to be able to get a real good handle as to where they're actually going, because they can be written so fluidly from pre-file. Just looking over the chat here. So let's go ahead and kind of springboard from that into one of the discussion topics that we were talking about. A lot of times, one of the things that people have been talking about in the last week is as these bills come up, the short notice, and then even when we get enough notice, when we rally supports like cities like Bloomington, where there were 60 vapors, 2 shop owners, and the lobbyists for the state of Minnesota that turned out for that particular ban, they felt that they didn't get heard, and the council went ahead and made their decision based on that, or based on a preconceived idea. And I kind of wanted to bring this to the forefront because if you think about it, if you think real hard about it, when these bills get in and they get all the way up to the city council, they're very far along their way. Usually they'll be introduced and talked about at least twice before they're voted on. And they usually only take one session of public comment on it. So that doesn't seem like a very effective way to mount a good response to ordinances like this. But it's not the only way. And that's where what we want to talk about today. It's not the only way. So, Monk, you and I have been talking, and do you remember some of the things we were talking about that people need to be doing besides just waiting for it to hit the floor of the council?
Yeah, they just need to be proactive. They need to really find out what's happening, get people together, talk to shop owners. I mean, this is like we keep doing this a lot, telling people you got to talk to these vape shop owners and really get them on board. And it's not just a one-time thing. You just got to keep bugging them about it.
Yeah, one of the things people don't realize is a lot of government is done in a social nature. There's functions and certain civic clubs that these council members go to, and there's a lot of discussion between them about things that are going to be affecting the community. And this is the place where we need to be putting some effort in. So these civic functions are very important. And I know everybody who owns a vape shop right now is saying the same thing. Well, I don't even have time to walk my dog. How can I go grab cocktails with the city council? Well, that's what you need to think about.
Yeah, you need to make the time.
Yeah. Robin has a very interesting way of putting this. And Robin, what was it you were telling those vape shop owners in Philly?
I say the same thing. When somebody says to me, I'm too busy to do it, I say, you know what, that's all good and well, but in a couple of years, you're going to have all the time on your hands that you need, because you're not going to have a business anymore. It'll be gone because people like you are not stepping up to it. That's my answer.
So this is one of the things we really need to start as a long-term effort. Everybody's trying to play this in a short game stance. In other words, we find out about it, we rush down to City Hall, we dress accordingly, we go in there, we throw a bunch of science at them, we throw a bunch of passion at them, and hope they make the right decision. But that's just one tool of advocacy. Advocacy is a long-term game. So, and now a lot of people are making comments like, well, it's a government for the people, by the people, and all that. Well, yeah, but people interact. People have to interact. So if you're not playing on all the fronts, if you're not involving yourself on all the fronts, you're missing out on a good percentage of the battle for this. Something to think about.
Yeah, it's something that I think you said it, but it bears repeating, that by the time it gets to a public hearing, they've already made up their mind.
Yeah.
The public hearing is largely for show, and I think for them to fulfill probably some sort of requirement. And we've seen, I think this happened in Michigan. It was the tax bill. We kept getting that threat that it was going to come to a hearing, and then it didn't, and then we get more threats. Maybe it was going to go to another committee where it's more friendly to this particular sponsor or taxes or whatever, and it didn't. And I think the sentiment was that a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff had happened to kind of maybe scare the bill sponsor a little bit, that he didn't have the support that he thought he did going forward. And so rather than be embarrassed by introducing a bill that no one likes, it just won't put it on the agenda. And I think that happens a lot in, I don't know what's going on in Philly on the ground, but I would suspect, and this also with this flavor ban in New York City, I suspect that the sponsors of those bills are getting a lot of pushback and are seeing that these are going to be unpopular things, and it's going to be very hard for them to get it passed. And so there's a huge delay in the time since it was introduced to it actually showing up on a hearing schedule. And all that stuff happens behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
The Michigan wasn't so much behind the scenes. In fact, I can tell you some of the things that happened were there were a group of individuals who contacted another senator who was a co-sponsor on another bill that Richardville was on. And there was a little bit of conflict. The co-sponsor on the bill didn't agree with Richardville's stance on the tax bill. And he went directly to Richardville about it. So it's sometimes it's about who you talk to.
Right.
And we're very lucky that we've got a very active group of people here in Michigan that are very proactive on trying to get ahead of that bill. So again, one of the things that that we wanted to talk about here and get people aware of is we need to start looking for opportunities where we can interact. And now this doesn't really just apply to the vape store owners, though they are very important in this. The same thing applies to vapors, being active civically, Civitans, Kiwanis, and all those, and making your presence known in those as being pro for electronic cigarettes is a very, very good way to send messages to government. So we're looking at new layers of activism that we can get involved in. So Robin, how has the response been in Philly when you've had this type of meetings?
I was I was a little frustrated the other night. I kind of felt like I was up against a brick wall for a good part of the meeting. And as time went on, it got a little bit better, but I'm not sure I completely got through to everybody. And it was frustrating because people get certain ideas in their heads, and it's hard to break them of that. And an example, and we say this all the time, is they thought by doing petitions they were going to they'd be heard. And I said to them, petitions typically don't work. You have to have a certain percentage, and we know it's 10% of the population sign it. In a city like Philly, where it's 1.5 million, I know they don't have 150,000 signatures. I'm sure of that. But they didn't hear me. They kept saying over and over and over again, well, this petition and that petition, make sure you sign our petition. And it was like, I felt like I was talking to nobody, and I think finally they started to get it, and then I talked about emailing and sending letters and that kind of stuff. Well, no, they don't look at that. I said, you have to understand, we've spoken to politicians who say that they do look at that stuff. As long as you're registered to vote, because if you're not registered, they don't want to hear from you anyway, and hopefully have voted in the last election. Well, they just didn't want to hear that from me. They thought that every politician should listen to everything they have to say because they live there. And I tried to explain to them that to politicians, votes mean money. With the votes going in their direction, they get to keep their job. If they don't get that, obviously they don't get to keep their job, and they're not making that money. And it was just, it was very, very frustrating trying to get some of the points across to people that, talking about appearing in any kind of a hearing, and you started to talk about that in a little bit before, just going appropriately dressed. Please don't blow clouds in the courtroom, because we know that happens sometimes. And you would have thought I had 6 heads the way they looked at me, like there was something wrong with me. One guy said, you can go dressed any way you want to, and my point was, no, you have to go looking professional, like casual, professional though, but not jeans and your favorite vape shop's t-shirt. You have to go looking like, you have to look like somebody should respect the way you are coming from where they are, And one guy said, no, only the vape shop owners have to do that. It was, all the contradiction was really frustrating to me. And at one point I said to him, like, why do you guys want me here? Like, why do you want me here? If you're not going to listen to anything I have to say, why am I here? Some of them got it, some of them didn't. Then there was talk about a lobbyist, and I'm not even getting into that whole thing with you. But a lot of frustration, and we talked that night. We were in the hangout that night, and I was frustrated. I was very frustrated. There were other things going on. I asked them to please keep in touch with me about. They didn't. Their choice. But unfortunately, without the guidance that they need, and trust me, they need it, I'm not sure how well things are going to go for them in Philadelphia. Just don't know.
Well, we're going to be over in the Philadelphia area in the first few weeks of December, and again, we'll reinforce the messages that we understand. And I guess this kind of brings me to the topic that we've had a few discussions on lately, is when it comes to advocacy, there's really, let's face it, it's a game of guessing, and each of the groups that are out there is trying to provide people with the best information that they can from what they've analyzed. So sometimes we will get some conflicting information, but there are some hard and fast things that we find to be very, very solid. CASA has never said show up at City Council in a T-shirt and jeans.
Right.
Safada's never said that. We've never said that.
What's funny to me is, you know, there were people, mostly there were people who owned vape shops, just regular vape shops. There was somebody there who does online, but happens to be in Philly, you know. But the people that had the most questions, that made the most sense, a conversation with me, owned a head shop in Northeast Philadelphia. They were the head shop owners, not so much the regular vape shop owners, but them, which I thought was kind of funny, you know.
Well, they've been doing this for years. I mean,
Yeah.
And it's, you know, that head shop kind of on the sly business model is potentially where a lot of us are going to be headed.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm sure that they've already had these questions in the queue for a while. That is funny though.
They've owned that same vape shop since, I want to say they told me 1976. The same husband and wife have had that same vape shop. So they're doing something right over there. They got to
The head shop.
be.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's a lot of things, there's a lot of different businesses that have got a little bit more experience. I mean, we have to remember we're a very young industry. And I love all the people who have taken the opportunity to come into this industry. But sometimes one of the things that they're lacking is the experience running a business. And that is a very, very important skill when you're dealing with government regulation and local regulations and your business. That's something that is a refined art. It's not something that you can do if you're trying to figure out how, if you're busy trying to figure out how to put QuickBooks together so it'll work for your business, you're probably not in the right league for dealing with government and impacting your business. So some people might need to reach out and get some skills so that they can understand better how businesses work and how businesses interact with government. It's always a good idea.
You know, my friend owned a head shop for 5-6 years, and his whole thing was always talking with the city council, always being close to what they're saying, where they hung out. He'd go there, he'd, you know, tell them what he did, and they was like, oh, you know, and they would get really good with them. And then when it came down for a, you know, ordinance coming down, they would contact him, say, hey, this is what we're looking at, and what do you think? And he would tell them, and they would find out a happy medium, and then everything was well. And they really loved him for a long time until he decided that he didn't want to do this anymore, and he ended up closing down. But for the first year, that's all he did was hobnob with the city council people.
Mm-hmm. Built a
And
relationship.
It paid off for him in big ways.
Yeah.
That relationship paid off. And this is what vape shop owners need to do. Even vapors, as the constituents, the ones that vote for these people, you'll see a benefit in it when you do that also.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they find out you're an expert or they know you know a lot, they at some point will contact you and ask you questions. That's what they do. So, but it depends on that relationship. And like you say, we're too busy with our lives or too busy with our jobs. But when they finally ban it in your city, then you're upset. Then you want to do something. And we always seem to be reactive. We need to be proactive.
Yeah. Yep. And I always say this is my line I always use, Joe, you're going to be sick hearing me say it, but I say it all the time. It's so much easier to prevent a fire than it is to put one out. So if you can, work towards keeping a lot of the stuff from coming up the way that it does, rather than trying to fix it once it's in front of your face, it works better.
As we were coming together as the militia, one of the more interesting people that I got to talk to was Pamela Gorman from Enjoy. Pamela Gorman is a former state senator for the state of Arizona. And when I started talking to her, I was asking questions about how does this work for a senator? How do they make decisions on so many different things, and how do they keep track of what's going on? And she said, well, that's kind of a very important thing for you to know if you're trying to advocate, because a lot of times these state senators depend on their aides, to provide them for information where the holes are. And sometimes they'll reach out to constituents that are subject matter experts so that they can get that. Now, you need to think about that in the same respect at the city level, maybe not as diverse, but it's very probable that this person who's sitting the city council may have been the manager of a hamburger stand for the life before he was on the city council. He may have run a bookstore. He may have been a principal at a high school. You don't know what he was before he was a city council, and that's where he's going to draw his education from what he is aware of. And when they're faced with an issue of a product that they don't understand, and they've got people from public health giving them one story, and they've got the constituents that are writing them giving them different stories, it can be very confusing for them. So reaching out to a city council in a manner that is not confrontational is a key here, especially with the current condition like the midterm elections, where we have a number of people who have just come into office and they are not aware of what's going on. They're maybe not 100% aware of all the issues that are going down. And this is your chance to go in and make an impression on a new individual in government that has never been exposed to this. And you could be the first person that talks to him about this. So coming in there and ranting and screaming, "Don't take my e-cigs away," is probably not the best way to start that conversation. Something to think about. Alex, what would you think with some of these new constituents? What's some of the approaches that we should be using? You've read Citizen Lobbyist. I know you've read it.
I'm horrible with reading books. I pick one up, I read a little bit, and then I put it down. And actually, I think that one gets to a point where it's kind of like, is that the one, or was it the media training one? I can't remember.
In the Citizen,
I think you
go ahead.
Go ahead.
In Citizen Lobbyists, they talk about the first thing that you should do when you approach someone that's in office the first time is go in for a meeting on something that you agree on, even if it's not your issue. Now, this sets up an interesting dialogue. So this is when I was talking about the long game. If you go in and you meet with one of these individuals on a common ground where you both agree, and even if you get behind and support them on that particular issue, you now gain their trust.
Mm-hmm.
So when you come forward with an issue where maybe you're on different sides, at least your opinion will be heard.
Yeah, you don't look like such a raving lunatic or serial contrarian that just wants to fight.
Not us. Come on.
No.
So that's what some of the things you can think about as you're going in. Is going in and creating that style of an atmosphere can be very beneficial to you as you're advocating. And of course, you have to keep decorum about you. You know, if you're going for an appointment with the city council, again, dress appropriately. In my case, I have to hide the sailor in me. So, profanity is not punctuation. It's tough. They both start with a P. So, some things to think about. So, Robin, we were going to talk about a couple of different articles in this in our second segment, and one of the ones was, and I'll go ahead and copy this through the rooms.
Which one? The one about
for
the addiction or something?
The nicotine from the UK.
Yeah, that's a pretty interesting article. It's and you know, when I read it, and it's not a medical article. You know, I mean, it refers to some medical stuff. It's not a medical article. So what I don't know is the why for why they find these things. But what they noticed is that nicotine seems to be helpful with you know, different diagnoses like schizophrenia, ADD. I'm trying to think what else. Depression, obesity, ulcerative colitis. I can't think of what else, to be honest with you. Yeah, Parkinson's and Alzheimer's both, you know. So, and, you know, being the nurse that I am, I was trying to figure out exactly why, you know. But it looks like for whatever reason it seems to work, you know, the things that are neurologic, it seems to improve. And with the ulcerative colitis and some of the other stuff, it makes me wonder about if it decreases inflammation. Because ulcerative colitis is typically an illness of inflammation, you know, in the gut. And I don't know, it's pretty interesting. So now you gave me homework. I have to find out why. Because if they're, I know, right? You knew you were going to go there anyway, right? But I want to know now. I want to know why, because I think it's really interesting that it helps all these things. Like I totally get, you know, like the weight thing, because it's a stimulant. You know, it's a stimulant, and it also does the whole, you know, oral gratification thing, just like vaping does. And that's the reason why it would help, I think, ADD or ADHD. Because, you know, the medications they typically treat that with are stimulants. But it's, I don't know, it's a pretty interesting article. Now I need to know why those things happen, you know, how it's working, what's the mechanism. And then I'll have to come back and explain that, I guess, right?
Yeah, you'll have to. And one of the reasons why I brought this particular article up to the forefront here is many people, when they go in and they're trying to advocate for e-cigs, you get to that sticky point where that councilman looks at you and says, but nicotine's addictive. You know, and that statement is usually said with a very venomous tone, and it's meant to and I know this will get Alex to chuckle. It's definitely aimed at you, dirty addict, you dirty addict, and your nicotine. So.
Yeah, because the term addiction is always, it's never used in a positive way. It's typically used as a derogatory kind of a statement, you know?
Or it's meant to imply harm.
Right.
Addiction itself is some sort of health problem.
Yeah. So, like, if you look up the definition of this is off the top of my head. I'm pretty sure a definition of addiction would be, you know, a state where you are compulsively using something, seeking after it, whatever, using it to meet a need, despite the knowledge that it's bad for you. That's what I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure that's what the definition is. But to me, that's inaccurate. And I get the part, especially. You know, to me, everything applies except for the part that, with the knowledge that it can be, that it's bad for you. Because I don't think certain things are bad for you that they consider so harmful. Mm-hmm. But I think that they intentionally, I think it's defined that way for that purpose. I don't know.
I think in some of the recovery programs, they also use the stipulation that that addiction also can harm you and can harm others, isn't it? Something like that. I think they had something along that line where you see this cascading effect of things where the compulsion to get to it is done without any regard for anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
So Father Jack has a number of good YouTube videos talking about addiction science and how the views of the use of nicotine are out there. So if you're looking for other information about that, he's a real good source for that particular information. I've seen quite a few videos from him that have really good information about that. And sometimes it's really hard to get someone who is not a cigarette smoker to even understand why a vapor would choose to continue to vape. It's a tough thing to try to convince someone of. What are you smirking about, Alex?
I said my favorite thing that comes out of the whole addiction is bad for you thing is I think it comes from I don't know. Actually, I don't know the origins of it, but I've seen it tossed around in like the Alan Carr message boards, or a lot of the Alan Carr disciples. They have this kind of whole platitude about being free from nicotine, and then there's the whole nicotine zombie thing. Like, don't you want to be in charge of your own decisions? Like, because nicotine, your mind isn't your own. Doesn't that scare you? And it's just silly. And then again, you know, we have the whole nicotine zombie, smoking zombie, the whole zombie meme. I think I don't know if it's the American Cancer Society or somebody just put out a mobile game where you're zapping smokers that are zombies. Just reinforcing.
Wow.
I'll have to dig up the link, but yeah, it was timed for the smoke out, and
You got to find that game, because I got to post it in the militia board, because I'll rack up some high score on that thing.
Oh my God, that's funny. Let me read you the addiction definition, okay? Real quick.
Go ahead.
Addiction. It says addiction is a state defined by compulsive engagement in rewarding stimuli despite adverse consequences. It can be thought of as a disease or biological process leading to such behaviors. That's the definition.
So when we break that down, we go back to the old adage: people smoked for nicotine, but died from the smoke.
Yeah, I died from the tar.
Yeah, all the other stuff.
So there we run into the conundrum of we're not seeing the harm.
Yeah.
You know, there is a quote that says the whole problem with nicotine is that it happens to be found in cigarettes.
Yeah.
People can't dissociate the two in their mind, nicotine and smoking. When they hear nicotine, they automatically get smoking in their mind, and it's
Right.
actually not always
If you want
used
an
in that way.
addiction, there's an addiction for you right there. Okay, if you haven't had these things, once you open the bag, you can't stop until they're gone. Those jalapeno Cheetos, now that's an addiction.
Wow.
Those things are dangerous.
But you see, it's the whole thing is that people they use addiction so lightly. They throw it around so loosely. You know, you're addicted to this. You're addicted to shopping. You're addicted to, you know. I think, you know, we've seen it before. We're not addicted to nicotine. We're dependent on it. We have a dependency on it because it shows you that people can get off it. There are people that have gone cold turkey and been successful in that. So. But it's a dependency that we have.
Like caffeine. To me, it's
Like
just
caffeine?
similar to caffeine. Yeah. Which everybody associates with coffee, but you can find in other places too. You know?
Yeah.
Pain medication. Caffeine is there a lot of times because it helps to potentiate the action. It's in, you're going to laugh at me, but it's in like some face creams because it actually helps bring down like puffiness under your eyes. Like it's in a lot of places you wouldn't think of. You know, but people don't get as crazy over it as they do over the nicotines in cigarettes.
I don't know what the actual thing is, but my wife just started using used coffee grounds mixed with almond oil on her skin. I'm sure there's some leftover caffeine in there, and something with the grittiness of the grinds and other stuff. But yeah.
The caffeine constricts vessels. It constricts vessels too, so it brings down the puffy.
Nice.
That's why people use it under their eyes. I mean, there's all different companies that make face creams with it. But caffeine brings down the puffy.
Yeah, caffeine brings down the puffy. What a slogan.
Well, that's one of the things, you know, and when we bring this back to advocacy, one of the things that we've started doing is putting in, actually, there's 2 good articles that have been published about nicotine independent of smoking and how it's being used for certain other to treat certain other diseases. And there's a lot of very interesting studies, like there was the one where the mice when they were sourced directly to nicotine, that they would not self-medicate with it. They would not go and get the nicotine themselves. So, and these are, and there were tests that years ago that where they tested the mice with smoke products, with tobacco-related products, and those mice did. So there's a lot of weirdnesses in here on whether or not this addiction is 100% the same way as they think a lot of the other addictions are, because there's a lot of different parts of it. And that's one of the things that Father Jack brings out is there's a mechanical sensation, there's a behavioral sensation, there's all kinds of things that are associated with vaping and using a product in the manner that we do. So all of those have a very significant impact on how this should be viewed, and not everybody is 100% aware of that.
I just want to throw in, this is not specific to smoking. This is, what we know about addiction is actually, I mean, there's a few addiction experts in the world, and it's not all addictions are sort of the same. I mean, I'm a recovering alcoholic, so when I smell bread proofing, it reminds me of beer, and there are things firing off in my brain that create a craving or memories. And if I'm not prepared to deal with that, magically I want a beer. But I understand that there's mechanics and logistics in my brain involved with creating that craving. So it all over. I mean, it doesn't matter what your drug of choice is. There's a behavioral component to all of that, and one of the AA platitudes is people, places, and things. When you stop drinking, if you walk by a bar every day on your way home from work, and that was your favorite bar, take a different route. If you have a set of friends that you used to hang out with and get high, you don't hang out with them anymore. They warn a lot of people in recovery. Don't go to a bar and drink soda. You're right there. The shelf is right there across the bar. There's 4 feet separating you from your next drink, if that. So it's for people to give nicotine or heroin or cocaine or alcohol all kinds of magical powers, it doesn't really help the conversation at all. It's absolutely politically motivated. And I feel a bit resentful towards the entire, addiction bad conversation being thrown out there, because it's really not doing a service. It's doing a disservice to smokers, and it's doing a disservice to anybody that's ever struggled with addiction.
I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, I do too.
Nice rant. Good job. But it's true.
Now.
It's very true that and a lot of people, one of the things that people look at here is when we use nicotine as a recreational use. I mean, that's really what we're doing, right? It's, for that matter, there seems to be that's also creating another tag of ill will that we would actually choose to use nicotine. Not so much that we're dependent on it, because many people have reduced their nicotine down to the 3 milligram. Some even have gone down to 0. So if you did choose to use a nicotine juice, is that more of a recreational type thing? I mean, it's something to think about.
I have no qualms with letting people know that I'm self-medicating. I honestly don't care what you think about that. I actually use chewing gum to manage heartburn too, and I think to some extent I've become dependent on that. So if anybody wants to judge me for that, they can go right ahead.
You mentioned gum, and actually that's kind of something as we know that Pfizer and all those guys and GlaxoSmithKline have got their nicotine gum products out on the market, and then lo and behold, the Reynolds releases a nicotine gum, Zonic. Okay, it's now out on the shelves. So that's not a pharmaceutical. It's not an NRT. So it's going to be interesting to see how this is addressed in the market space.
Yeah.
I saw that. I want to see if I can order that online.
It's going to be kind of interesting as that goes forward, because that's kind of been the kind of the litmus that they've been using to say that what we're doing is not FDA regulated, it's not medicinal, so it needs to be handled immediately by the actions of local government, because the FDA isn't acting quick enough for them. Well, it's going to be interesting to see what the response is to this particular product.
Zonic is actually being marketed as a smoking cessation product.
As an NRT?
Zonic is a stop smoking aid. They've got a link to smokefreehabits.com. I wonder what that's about. Oh, look at that.
So now Reynolds is marketing its own stop smoking product?
Yes, they are.
Is it flavored?
Looks they've got 3 flavors. I'm guessing that's mint, orange, and cinnamon or cherry.
Flavors.
The dreaded flavors.
Because adults don't like flavors.
I hate flavor. I eat everything in black and white.
Yeah.
God forbid you actually have something that has some flavor to it.
Wow.
Oh, I can get this right down the street from work. They sell it at Rite Aid.
Not CVS? Wow. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. That's another show.
They might. It's a stop smoking product. They got FDA approval for it, right? I mean, it's just nicotine gum. It's not anything really all that revolutionary. It's just being branded differently.
I had to do a little more work. I got to do a little more research on it. It actually surprised me when I saw it popped out there.
Yeah, I'm curious now too.
I'll pick some up tomorrow. I'll give you a review.
Oh, we could get a review of the nicotine gum. That'll be awesome.
Yeah.
You could do a YouTube review.
Yeah, I should just pull thing, unboxing, everything, chew it. Like, yeah, this is great. Maybe I wonder if I could blow bubbles with it. That would be like the nicotine gum culture equivalent. I could do gum tricks.
So, but what I'm trying to do here is give a couple of different. We're trying to give you some information so that when you are in front of a city councilman, or when you're in front of someone who challenges you on that issue of that terrible addiction that you've got to nicotine, at least you have a few other alternatives for what you can present to them. So, just something to think about.
Yeah, I think I'm going to call Alex a bubble chaser.
A bubble chaser.
Someone just put that in the chat. A bubble chaser.
Hilarious.
And we'll still be accused of marketing to kids.
Yeah.
I would say that when you do appear in front of your lawmakers, that bubble chasing is probably not recommended.
Yeah, especially when it gets in your hair when it pops.
Yeah, it's disrespectful.
How many times as a kid your mom had to cut patches of hair out of your head because there was gum stuck to it?
Well, I learned that lesson once the hard way. So.
And then the next thing I wanted to talk about right quick, let me get this article up here on Snooze. Just a moment. Let me get this in the chat right quick. Looking at Norway, and snus use has tripled over the last 3 years. And I know a lot of people don't particularly care for the idea of snus and looking at it, but again, this is one of the first products that is kind of one of the foundation products when you're looking at THR. And it's a product that has gained a very negative reputation without the physical science behind it to support the claims that are being made about the negative connotations of it. One of the things that we've seen in Sweden is a significant reduction in male smokers to less than 5% with the introduction of this on the market. And the incidence of lung cancer and even oral cancers are on the decline as they look at the Swedish health records. You were saying you had kind of an interesting experience with this while you were in London, Alex, didn't you?
Yeah, first I do want to point out that the article that you posted the link to has no comparison to how smoking rates are also declining in Norway since, and obviously it's just not really a direct link, but I have seen the graph of smoking rates coming down as snus comes up. And I'm looking at a Wikipedia article here, and I think the smoking rates in Norway were up around 30% a couple of years ago.
Yep.
So that's pretty remarkable that people are actually picking up snus. But yeah, my experience in London after the conference, I spoke to a guy who was I guess, research orthodontist, and his team were looking for funding to do studies on the effects of vaping and your mouth because the science isn't actually out there. And so I got to talking to him about snus, and he said, we deal, we know that smokeless tobacco is really, really bad for you. And I said, so you see a lot of oral cancer cases, right? He's like, yeah, actually we do. I said, and how many of those, like, do you know, like, are you told what caused it? It's like, yeah, sort of, here and there. I said, and how many of those are from smokeless tobacco use? And he kind of paused, like, oh, come to think of it, we don't really see a whole lot of that. Like, he was sort of hard pressed to actually come up with knowing from firsthand experience that smokeless tobacco was responsible for a lot of oral cancer. It's just not. And so it was, in the UK and in the rest of Europe in particular, I mean, there was basically a smear campaign run against snus to support the ban on the sale of it. So even people in the medical profession are misinformed about the risks associated with these products.
Yeah. Just to jump in professionally for you real quick. So I have 4 years of oncology background, gave chemo, took care of people after head and neck surgeries, that they had related to cancer, and I keep my oncology nursing certification just because. So that being said, the oral cancers from smoking are horrible. But I got to tell you, I can't remember any one patient who was not a smoker. I don't remember snus. I don't remember ever meeting anybody that used that other, what do you guys call it, like dip or something?
Yeah, dip,
that
chew,
stuff.
whatever.
They were all cigarette and cigar smokers. All of them. Everybody I took care of that I gave chemo to or took care of post-op after any kind of surgery, head and neck related to cancer.
Mm-hmm.
But they were smokers.
And these numbers that they've been reporting in Sweden are absolutely astounding. And I find actually a lack of concern to track those numbers. And I find that very interesting as I was doing some research and trying to get any numbers that might be on the U.S. side, and no one's really collecting this data. So it makes me kind of wonder if it's one of those things where, you know, people are jumping in and kind of putting the cart before the horse. I mean, it's tobacco, it must cause cancer. Oh, that's it. That's where they're stopping. So, you know.
Well, I mean, it's the same kind of story over there as it is here. You have pharmaceutical companies, and they know, and we have reports that it's been reported about pharmaceutical companies lobbying against vaping and possibly other tobacco harm reduction type products. You know, if I'm at the head of a pharmaceutical company who's pumping out stop smoking products, and I see snus coming along, and also smoking rates are declining rapidly, yeah, I think I'm going to actively campaign against that product because it's starting to cut into my profits. It's a very similar story.
So that's just kind of give you some of the ideas of some of the things that, one of the reasons why I know a lot of people have even said some interesting things about CASA, because CASA is looking at all smokeless alternatives as backing the entire THR ideology, and vaping is just one solution that they look at. And keep in mind that some of these other things have been around and on the market and are better documented. So the source material that comes from that will give us much more firm standing as we go forward by looking at these products and using them comparatively as we look at vape products.
Yeah, the only data that we're missing in terms of the vaping is the effect of the vapor on your lungs, and that's science that is probably coming down the pike, obviously. But yeah, the important things here are the effects of nicotine on your body removed from the smoke, and yeah, that's what 10 years of snus data offers.
Yep. Very important data. Very important data as we go forward, because the research to legitimize this is crucial as we go forward. And I've used this analogy a number of times when it comes to people that are talking about advocacy, and they say they're very worried because all these bans are going through and it seems like the entire world's against us. And I remind people frequently that in 1901, that 38 states had a ban of some form on the automobile. She's doing pretty good now. So I think our efforts can be well rewarded. Actually, there is only one state that currently has a ban on the automobile, and I live there. It's Michigan. You can't bring a personal vehicle on Mackinac Island if you wanted to. It's against the law. So that's something to think about. Next area I wanted to talk about is a little place up in Massachusetts. Worcester, Massachusetts. The Board of Health there decided that they were going to ban all tobacco products completely. And it's a 3-member board, and they held a town hall meeting to get the public's response. And let's just say that town hall meeting didn't go very well for the public health people. They closed the meeting out after 3 people spoke because they felt it was out of control, and the police came forward to escort the public health people out of the building. So kind of an interesting idea that when when a public health group goes forward with an all-encompassing ban like this, imagine we've always often wondered what public response would be, and it was pretty heated. So we had some people. Chris Prost gave us a pretty good idea of what was going on through there. He was there firsthand, and so if you read his account of what went on, it's pretty interesting. So what do you think about this type of response, Robin?
You're breaking up? I don't know what you just said.
I said, what do you think of this type of a response like they did in Worcester, where when they had the ban and everybody got so...
Westminster.
Westminster?
Yep.
Is that how you say that one?
Well, it's actually spelled Westminster.
Oh. I thought I had
You're thinking of a different town, Worcester.
Oh, I am? It was
Yeah.
Westminster. Sorry about that.
Westminster. That's all right. It's the W.
So you're asking what I thought of the response, what, that they got nasty or that they
Yeah.
left or... Yeah, I understand their frustration, but, obviously I don't think it was the right way to handle it because you lose by default when you act like that,
Well, it was an outrageous ban.
I gotta say, I saw this. I was in London when this happened, and I was for I guess 2 or 3 days. Every time I thought about it, I had a few bars of "God Bless America" running through my head.
Yeah, seriously.
Just-
Couldn't they have fought it anymore at that point? I'm sorry.
I didn't even. I actually didn't. I don't think I even watched any of the video coverage. I just heard that that's what happened, and so I just associated that with the story. Yeah, sorry, I jumped in there. It wasn't my turn to
That's okay.
give my impression.
I think I need to refresh. You guys are breaking up and freezing, and I think I missed something. I'm going to refresh. I'll be back.
Do you think their response was unwarranted?
No, there was a point in time where I think people were a little bit concerned that no one was going to show up. And for, what was it, 1,000 people?
Yeah.
To show up, 1,000 people in a town of 7,400. On one hand, I want to say that it's predictable. I mean, that this much public outcry would show up. On the other hand, given what we've seen recently with people's lack of interest in participating in these things, I think our concerns were warranted that if 5 sad people would show up and say, "God bless America, don't take my freedoms away," and I think especially for Massachusetts, the Board of Health isn't elected. These aren't actually elected officials making these decisions. And so I think that kind of compounds the anger there, is that you just have a few people who nobody voted for saying, "We're going to do this," and you're all just going to have to deal with it. It's not, I don't think anybody feels good about that. And I'm looking at this picture of this older guy waving a flag. Looks like he's screaming. I honestly think that's kind of, I think that sums it up pretty well. I, on the other hand, was kind of rooting for this to pass. I don't wish anything at the expense of the residents of Westminster, but I wanted this to go into effect and become an abject failure. And
yeah,
so
because I think it would have. It would have been a terrible one.
Yeah, either way, I think that we all sort of have something to point to and say, first of all, this is wrong what you're doing, and if it were to pass, then we'd have something to say. And it's a bad idea. Look what happened, in this town, where businesses just closed up and people still smoked. because we have automobiles and friends in other towns that can bring us tobacco products. So, you know,
I think Robin's having a few problems. There you go.
I
There
think
you
I'm
go.
here now.
Finally, you're back.
That was just weird. I'm not sure where I went, but I was somewhere else. You guys sounded like robots, and then you were breaking up, so I wasn't sure what either of you were saying, and then I don't know. But it took me like 4 tries to get back in.
So
Sorry.
one of the things with those non-elected officials making these decisions, it doesn't even give you the recourse of using, you know, recall or anything like that to even remove them from office.
yeah.
So I think that's the part that scares me the most.
I mean, yeah, I guess the only other way to maybe, if this did pass, you would see some sort of legal challenge, and then, and then again, you know, you've got residents who would ordinarily be able to say, "Hey, lawmaker, you're putting a strain on the town's resources. Why are we spending tax dollars fighting against a lawsuit that, you know, all of this is silly. Why are we throwing money at it?" And
Yeah.
you have no recourse there.
Yeah, I don't like the idea of them being able to do that. And, you know, I don't know that this is going to come back up at all because of the way the response was to it. I have a feeling that you won't see this, at least not at this stage in the game. You won't see this type of thing. Though it does get...
I think... Did I read this somewhere that the person in charge of the I guess the woman that kind of brought this, that spearheaded this, I don't want to be misreporting something, but did I see somewhere that it was basically, I mean, this hearing was sort of voluntary on their part, like they didn't actually have to have a hearing.
No, they did not.
They did it as a courtesy to the people. So yeah, I mean, there's the other scary part of it, is that they didn't actually have to have a hearing. They could have just passed this in their boardroom and, you know, be done with it.
One of those instances where it makes you worry, it makes you think about the level of government and how far they can exceed their authority, or how far their given the authority is, where we don't even have input to. So that's kind of scary there.
Yeah.
I would expect it. I would have expected something like this to come out of California personally. Nothing. Sorry, Monk, but I would have expected this to come out of California. I've seen the labels that they put on trees out there.
Don't mess with our trees.
That's pretty funny.
Who's to say it won't? Who's to say they won't try it out there? Berkeley seems pretty. Wouldn't it be Berkeley? Stefan's in the chat. Stefan, I'm sure, can identify a town that would be most likely to try it all out prohibition.
I'm sure Stefan could find one real quick. I mean, I was worried when you go up to when you walk up to the hotel and there's the label on the side of the hotel. This building contains possible chemicals that could cause cancer. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute.
It's
It's
only
funny.
if you're a California resident. Sorry, go ahead.
It's funny because Berkeley, yeah, they could do an all-out ban, but half of their damn professors smoke, so it's...
Oh, Stefan said they just passed a soda tax, so who knows?
Yeah.
They were going to do that in Philly a couple of years ago, but it didn't happen.
You know how you don't pay that tax? Don't buy no soda.
Mm-hmm.
There's ways for consumers to get past a lot of this stuff. I think
Oh, yeah.
just being in California causes cancer.
Hopefully not, Mondo. Hopefully not.
Oh, Stefan says especially politicians when it comes to causing cancer.
Mm.
Yeah, the cancer of the brain.
Are you serious? I just read the bit about red traffic lights.
Because it was a hostile color.
Oh man, that takes a cake. That's the funniest fucking thing I've heard all week.
Well, you know, California, they're all about, environmental and all this stuff, and they say, well, the red hostile color. I said, well, you don't have the red hostile color on the highways, and there's still a lot of rage going on. So, I think they want to replace the red bulbs in the back of your car with a nice, tranquil blue or something like that.
Lavender, is it?
Nice tranquil lavender. There you go. Oh my God.
Wow.
That screeching halt was so soothing to the person behind me.
Yeah. When they see that red color in the back of their, stoplights, they get, kind of angry. So let's change it to blue.
I like blue. Blue's a nice color.
Well, one of the other things that I was going to go into today, that we're going to ask Alex to give us a report on his trip to London there here towards the end. But one of the other topics that I wanted to go into was very frequently when we are at shows and stuff, people will come up and they'll approach me about all of these crazy different advocacy groups. You've got SFATA, you've got this group, you've got Kasai, you've got that group, you've got you guys. And almost everybody's asking me the same question: is who's right? Who's the one that I should be in with? And I guess the answer to that question is all of them. And a lot of people don't understand. In this game, we're looking at a great number of different tools to be able to do this job. People come from different angles and from different areas. And sometimes even using different philosophies when it comes to advocacy. And again, I think I've said this before, there's no true way to specifically say this is the way we need to be advocating, because not every approach works perfectly every time. So we need to have a lot of different choices when it comes to advocacy, and we need to have a lot of different tools that are available. Not saying that any one of them is any better than any other one. They're all trying to achieve the same goal. So just something to think about. If you have a particular one that favors your style, what you think should be done, by all means, throw your support behind that advocacy effort. So you should try to go in that way. Alex, you have anything you wanted to chime in on that particular topic?
Yeah, probably the easiest thing that anybody can do is join CASA. You don't even have to do anything. We just really want your name on a list of people who support this. My thought was it's kind of just like the flavors that you choose. I mean, if you're one of these people that feels like you have to pick just one, I mean, everybody fulfills a different role in this out of this group, and I don't know, $5 here and there, putting your name on a membership list. It's really not a whole lot to ask from anybody, and I'll get into some of my perspective on this ties into what I'll talk about from London. So, but yeah, simply lending your name. If being a warm body is your level of involvement, then be that warm body and just be a member. That's it.
Yeah, some people that's what they have to give. That's all they've got with what's going on in their life, and that's understandable. And then some people have other talents and other time that they can be willing to give up. Monk, did you want to throw in on this? No? Robin always has something to say about this topic.
No, I really don't have anything to say about this. I really don't.
I'm with Robin here. I don't have anything to say.
Well, some people obviously are driven to a different level, and I get the pleasure of working with them every day. So that's a lot of fun, and gives us all a chance to do what we feel is right for this industry.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there are some things that just come down the pipe that you're just, I have no words. I don't know what to say. I just have no thought on it because it's just so ridiculous sometimes. Or it's just so out there. You're like, I'm speechless on how people really, really think. I am speechless how people think. Because, you know, we're out here. Joe, you volunteer your time. I volunteer my time. We don't get paid for this.
No. Mm-hmm.
A lot of times when we go out to meets and all that stuff, money comes out of our own pocket just to get there. And when we go out and meet everybody, you know, we would love to go to every city in the United States when there's a problem that arises in their city council, but we don't have the manpower, we don't have the money to do these things. So what we do is we figure, hey, if we go to these vape meets where a lot of the vapors go to, a lot of the vendors go to, we get everybody in one shot. And we can talk to multiple people, we can get people fired up at one point, and we can go out there and talk to a lot of vendors at one time for the whatever 3 or 4 days it is. And I find that that is where the militia has been the most effective. This is how we've gotten our word out. This is why we've been, I don't want to say successful, but we've been effective in that way. And, you know, when you find that there's people out there that just really don't care about advocacy or don't care about it, they really don't care about the industry at all. When people don't care about the industry at all, then they're no good for the industry. They're not going to do anything for the industry. They just want to take from the industry.
Mm-hmm.
It takes all of us to get out there and do our part. It's not just sitting on your butt and thinking somebody else is going to do it.
Yeah.
Because if you think that way, you're going to lose everything. Look what happened in Westminster. They're banning it outright. Look what's happening in other countries. They're banning them outright. You don't think that's going to could not happen here? We're seeing it already. They're going to tax. They're going to tax the. They're going to tax you so much that you're not even going to want to do this. And yet, you think everything is fun and games. You think everything is hunky-dory. You think, oh, advocacy is boring. These guys are boring. Fine. You can think that way, but when the day that they take it from you, then you're going to be thinking, where were they at? How come they didn't help us? How come they didn't do anything?
Mm-hmm.
And yet we're here trying to do that every single day of my life since I became a vapor, since the vaping militia was born. It's been about this. I have no free time to myself because I feel passionate about this and I know that we can do good to help other smokers get off this. But some people think it's about the hobbyist way and it's about blowing clouds and it's about what can I get out of it? What can I, you know, be vape famous or can I be what kind of giveaway can I get? Can I get the latest thing and nobody else has? It's not about that. It's about getting people off cigarettes and letting people live a little bit longer so they can hug their mothers and they can hug their daughters and they can talk to their grandfathers. They can talk to their mom and dad still. But you know what? It seems like it's falling on deaf ears. And I'm sorry, I just had to go on a rant.
No, that's okay. That's why I said I had nothing to say. I didn't want to go on a rant, but guess what? It's my turn now. Lately, for whatever reason, just lately, a lot of people have... And my answer is always the same thing, because it needs to be done and we're willing to do it. But everybody should be willing to do it. Maybe not to the degree that, you know, the 8 of us on our board do or Alex and the people that he works with do, but on some degree, you know. And Monkey, you talked about like the big shows and stuff that we go to, and people grab our cards and stuff, and I know what I do sometimes with cards, you know, and I'd love to think that they take our card that says this is what you can do as a vapor, and on the other side, this is what you can do as a vendor for advocacy. But like I kind of have in my head, people going home and just throwing that on a table and never looking at it again. If they would take that information and share it with a couple of people, a couple more people would know about what's out there, what's going on, what they can do for advocacy, and the word would just keep getting spread. Like I'm always amazed when I'm somewhere and I say to people, have you ever heard of the Vaping Militia? And they're like, do you sell juice? Do you have something free for me? Are these things over here free? Can I just grab one? You know, they don't get it. And it's so frustrating to me because we do, you know, we put in a lot of hours, and I don't know what the people do on the other boards, but, you know, we all put in a minimum of 40 hours a week, I think, you know, doing this. And I think you said it, but none of us gets paid for it, and none of us expects to get paid for it. You know, I mean, we do what we do because it's our choice and we choose to do it. But you know, when other people don't get involved and do it too, we can't do everything. There's 8 of us on the board. We live in 7 states because 2 guys are in California. Mondo and, you know, are in California, and we can only do so much, you know. And I think part of our job is to educate everybody and get them moving and motivated, because we want to share the knowledge that we have, but we can't share it with you if you don't listen, if you don't want to hear it, if you don't come to us looking. We can't share it. We can't. And it's very frustrating that way, you know. I guess that's the end of my rant.
Well, everybody's had a good chance to rant for a little bit today. So, Alex, we're at about got about 40 minutes left. Did you want to tell us what you did when you were out wandering the streets of London?
I was not wandering the streets of London.
Oh.
So the reason that Carl and I went to London was to, well, first of all, just a little bit of background. All of this came about. I spent about 2 to 3 hours on the back porch of the whatever hotel that was at ECC, chatting with Oliver Kershaw.
Oh,
and,
the DoubleTree where I dragged you?
You still there?
Yeah, I said the DoubleTree where I dragged you.
The DoubleTree, that's it. Yeah, thanks for taking me out that night. Yeah, and at some point, Oliver said, you know, CASAA should really send somebody to the e-cigarette summit in London this year, and that ended up being Carl and I. And the conversations after that in chat and email revolved around, if we're going to go, we want to do something with the advocacy groups from Europe, because, you know, we might have experience that we can share with them. They might have experience they can share with us. We all need to get together and just learn from each other. And so Oliver set up a very nice get-together in kind of it's a vapor shop in Shoreditch, which is a neighborhood in London, and they have like a basement kind of cafe bar type setup, and so there's actually kind of a tiny room, and I think we stuffed about 20-25 people in there, and Carl and Clive Bates kind of kicked off a little presentation, a little brainstorming session. And so one of the main points that Clive brought up is something that we've been saying here, is what we need is an army of consumers. We need tens of thousands of people who use these products, that can vouch for these products, that can give their personal testimonies, and we need them organized so that when the time comes, they can support things like, you know, it's really not that much different than what we're doing here. You know, you have bad media that comes out, and you have a pack of vapors that jumps on the comment section or is writing letters to the person that wrote the article. When legislation comes around, which is a completely different process over there, you have, you know, obviously you have the lobbyists, you have industry people that are involved, but they need consumers to be able to back them up and say, yes, these products have made a profound difference in my life. And so, you know, when I first kind of stumbled into the whole vaping controversy, the first people that I followed, other than CASAA as an organization, were European vapors on Twitter. Lorian Jolly, David Bourne, Joe Lincoln, and some other people. And I got this impression that the vaping community in Europe was so much more organized and so further along than advocates in the U.S. And I had theorized that it was because of the Tobacco Products Directive and the fact that e-cigs had been popular over there, I guess, about a year or two before they really took off here. And it turns out that it's not really the case. There are some barriers for them as far as creating an organization or keeping records of privacy laws, as far as collecting email addresses from people are a lot more strict over there. I never really got a good feel for whether it was kind of a tactic or whether they had to, but if you're going to join an association, the association charges dues, so there's that kind of monetary barrier for people, and there's a lot of kind of hybridization going on. They're not really purely consumer groups. Of course, if you really get that right down to it, CASAA, we have industry people on our board. They just don't have a controlling percentage. But our membership and what we represent is purely consumer. Well, again, that's debatable. But we like vendors because that's where we buy our stuff. We just don't anyway. So I've been sitting down since I got home. I'm trying to write up a blog post about everything to kind of share with everybody. But a lot of the conversation was, for them, the Tobacco Products Directive is happening. It's happening all over. It's going to happen in 2016. And one of the presenters at the summit, Alette Addison, I think is her name. I might be wrong about her last name, but Alette. And she is from the government, and she gave a presentation about how the TPD will be implemented in the UK. Each country has to do it within a certain time frame, but in the UK they have a couple of options. They're all told bullshit options, but options nonetheless. And so, one of the things that I kind of kept bringing up was opportunities for engagement. In the United States, we have lots of opportunities. Mm-hmm. We have ordinances at the municipal level. We have bills at the state level. We're going to have some federal legislation. We have the FDA, which is still an ongoing thing. These for us, these are opportunities for us to bring in new members, and also an opportunity to have dialogue with lawmakers. In Europe, they don't have the same thing. It's not, there's not a county by county fight. There's not a city hall necessarily to go to. It comes from the top down. So if Germany says we're not going to allow you to vape in your car, it doesn't start at the local level and then become a countrywide thing. It starts at the top and comes down. So and so that all of those kind of city fights, they don't exist. So for them, being able to recruit membership, they just don't have a lot of those opportunities. One of the things, I think one of the reasons why I thought that the EU vapors were so much further along was because of the Tobacco Products Directive, and what came out of that was the European Free Vaping Initiative. So there's this rule in the EU that whenever a directive is announced, debated, whatever, put out there, and said, okay, we're going to do this, any group can come up with an initiative. And the rule is you have to have 1 million people sign this petition, and then you can go and argue your case against whatever directive.
Is that a
And
set
you have,
level every time, or is it a percentage level?
it's 1 million from all over Europe. 1 million Europeans have to sign this thing.
Oh, okay.
And then within each country, there's a threshold that you have to reach. So it's kind of a two-pronged thing. So, I mean, you could have 1 million people from the UK sign it, but if nobody else reaches their threshold, then you don't really get it. And so I think there was like 1, maybe 2 countries, I can't remember offhand, that got close to, or I think actually Spain had the most signatures. And if anybody's unfamiliar with what happened in Spain, I didn't really find out about it till last week either. I think you guys may have actually talked.
Yep. Yeah, we talked about the fact of all the negative press
yeah,
there.
there was,
Actually, the smoking rate went back up.
right. Yeah, well, it was, all of this came from a report in the press about a doctor, I think, that was using electronic cigarettes, was admitted to the hospital. They said that the diagnosis was lipoid pneumonia, and it came from vaping, which it actually wasn't lipoid pneumonia, and it doesn't have anything to do with vaping anyway. I mean, we know that if you vape the wrong stuff, there's that potential, but I think there's only been
Just a moment.
almost 80% of the industry shut down, but people ran back to smoke. And again, there's nothing to point out here. This is something that somebody else brought up. A lot of times we lose issues, the legislative fights, but just like with that New York Times article, selling poison by the barrel, how many people read that article and said, "Ugh, I can't vape anymore." So that potential always exists, no matter where you are. And the point you brought up, I think Mondo brought up, and we have all brought up at some point. You and I, we can read those articles and say, "Yeah, this is bullshit," but there's the guy down the road that might be thinking about giving up smoking and switching to vaping, and he reads some crap like this and says, "Well, I should just keep smoking because it sounds like it's healthier than vaping."
Yeah.
So yeah, back to the free vaping initiative. So Spain reached their threshold. I think the UK came close, but nobody else really got behind this thing. And this really was as simple as signing a petition. I mean, we poo-poo on petitions a lot here because we know that it doesn't really have that effect that people think it does. But this really is just a petition, and these guys, the guys, people I was like, hey,
hang on, Alex.
They called them the dodo boxes.
Can you go back to the beginning of that sentence right after you said they didn't make it? It broke up a little bit.
Okay. None of the other countries made it, reach their threshold?
Right. That's the last thing That's the last thing I got from you.
Okay. And then I went back on that this is really just as simple as signing a petition.
Yep.
Speaking to the people from Germany, and a lot of other countries did this as well. They produced dodo boxes to help people who weren't online or weren't going to be online to do this thing, and it basically just put a box with some slips of paper in a bunch of vape shops. I mean, they physically went to the vape shops and placed the box and the cards. So I'll be back in a couple of weeks to put this up, and I have no idea how many they actually put out, and they get like 5 or 6 sheets filled out. They're just your name, address, email address, whatever. You've signed the petition there, and then they would go in and kind of enter in the information from there.
Oh, wow.
And that kind of monumental, I mean, that's a lot of work, physically traveling around all these vape shops and placing a box. You know, we have a similar thing. We offer up our vendor stand, which is, $30, and you put it on your counter and you stock it with cards. Not a big deal. If we were to do the same thing here, if you were to go head to head with, like how many of those have we sold, translate that into signatures, we'd lose too. So yeah, it was. I think it's a German thing from what I gather, but I actually listened to this guy kind of just be very disappointed with the entire advocacy effort over there for almost the entire time that he was with us. But anyway, neither here nor there. It's kind of, there's a point you reach where it's like we can kind of piss and moan about how people don't participate in stuff like this, but then we just have to move on. We need to find different ways to engage people, and that was really the point of us, chatting about this. Anyway, all said and done, the deadline for this signature collection thing on the European Free Vaping Initiative ends on Tuesday, November the 25th. They are probably around 800,000 signatures shy.
Wow.
So, not only do petitions not work, but when you don't get the required number of signatures, perhaps petition say on looking silly in the end of it, which I think is something that they're, I think, quietly concerned about. If we were to fast forward 2 or 3 years down, we might not have a problem. They might not have a problem getting 1 million signatures to support this, but the timing, I think, is actually kind of bad. The other thing to bring up, and I think it's been reported pretty widely, is that actually, before I get into that, implementing the Tobacco Products Directive. It's a country-by-country thing. Everybody has to implement it basically the same way. Really, the only reason it goes country-by-country is because of the different languages. But at the moment, I believe the Netherlands are starting to implement it early. I spoke to one of the consumer advocate version from the Netherlands. It was Remco, and I can't remember the organization, but yes, and actually, so Stefan is commenting about the Totally Wicked suit in the chat of Akvoda. That's it. They're the contingent from the Netherlands. So Totally Wicked is suing the EU about the implementation there. And I don't know if that only pertains to the UK or if it is all of Europe. But again, there's kind of a weird timing thing there. I'm not going to report on it other than to say that it's happening. I don't fully know the details. I just know that it's going to be down to the wire.
Wow.
So yeah, a lot of our conversations with the advocates in Europe were trying to find ways for them to get support from a consumer base, and I have walked away from this entire experience with a much greater appreciation for how our government works. For every person that we listen to, that we have kind of this cynical saying here, which is, you can't fight City Hall. Yeah, but you can. You might not win, but you've got the opportunity. Other countries, not so much. And I think for a very long time, I personally have kind of taken our policy-making process for granted. And certainly I've subscribed to that defeatist attitude of, I'm not going to be able to make a difference, I'm just one person. But at the end of the day, after looking at kind of the anguished looks on these people's faces, I just know that we have so many more opportunities here to influence the way the laws are written, and we need to take of it. I mean, if you don't, picking up the phone and having a conversation is still a little bit more of an opportunity as European countries have. It was kind of depressing.
It's kind of
But they're all very
eye-opening.
friendly people.
Rather eye-opening when you understand
it
how
is.
other governments actually work compared to ours. And a lot of people will tell me how complicated ours is because there's so many different fronts, but there are so many different places that our voices can be heard.
Yeah, it's complicated because it's evolved over a few hundred years, and I think at some point, if it were possible to maybe strip everything down and take the good parts and say, okay, now this is the process, maybe that would make it a better system. But yeah, it really is, the way our government is set up. The idea is to give everybody an opportunity. I'm not going to, in a vacuum, it's set up to give everybody an opportunity to talk and voice their concerns and potentially influence policy. One of the great things about the lawmaking process here is that it's very fluid. I mean, obviously people come in with agendas to advance their political career or advance somebody else's business, and there certainly there is corruption. But when the way I like to think about this, when I think about Blondell Williams Brown, the city councilor in Philadelphia, when you were talking about people's backgrounds, I mean, she could have been a plumber for all we know. That's her level of that's her work experience. Let's just assume that she was a plumber. And now she's very passionate about fixing the school system in Philadelphia because kids. And so just one night she writes on the back of an envelope, oh, we just tax the hell out of vapor products and we're done, right? But because there's a process to it, she has to introduce that bill, and of course she's going to get some feedback on it. And so, in the spirit of how this all really should work, that's part of the process. If I have an idea about something and I don't say anything, I could really have the most screwed up idea in the world about how to do whatever. But if I don't tell anybody about it, I'm not going to get any feedback. And, our system is set up to prevent people like me from implementing bad ideas. If we don't take advantage of it, then bad ideas become law. Sometimes bad ideas can become law anyway because money. But, sorry, I'm just going off on a tangent here.
So while you were over there, let me ask a couple of questions. Just in general, did you see? I mean, you were in a community of vapors, but in public, what did you see for the vaping community?
Actually, the first morning that I was there, we went out to breakfast at just a little shop around the corner, and one of the employees, she stepped outside to vape because it's prohibited within the city to vape indoors. I think it got lumped in with the smoking ban.
Okay.
It sounds like there are certain exemptions, or people just ignore it to some extent. We were allowed to vape inside the kind of snack area downstairs at the Royal Society, but not in the conference room. Actually, I don't really. To come to think of it, I don't know what the rule is over there. But we were actually sitting at our table, trying to discreetly vape, and we were sort of at the back of the shop, and nobody said anything, but we did watch this girl go out back and have a vape on her break. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't see. I encountered a lot of people smoking.
You did.
Yeah. It's a major city, so of course you're going to see people smoking. Yeah, I think it was something actually that Carl pointed out while we were walking around. Was kind of the ban. The pub culture over there is substantially different than what it is here. The pub is the social gathering place for people, and they're not managed like they are here. Pubs are actually sort of chain type establishments. And so when the smoking ban came down, a lot of the independent pubs couldn't survive because they just didn't have the money to support the loss of people coming to hang out at their establishment. So in that case, the smoking ban actually did have some pretty dramatic economic consequences for business owners. Anyway, oh yeah, I got to go to a proper British pub. Maybe not proper. It was huge though.
It was huge.
It's huge. It's called the Admiralty, and it's sort of central London. There's three stories to it. And it was after work too, so it was jam packed. But yeah, everybody had to smoke outside.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. And vape outside.
And vape too. I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the things, when Jim did his traveling over to Italy, we got to talk to him about what he saw there. And that's why I was kind of, wanted to get that perspective from you too there in the social aspect, because, getting to understand what we're seeing in the other countries and how the product's being handled over there. And again, they've been looking at it a little longer than we have, in a regulatory sense. So it's very interesting.
Not so much on a regulatory account, but I did notice at the vape shop that we went to. It was called the Vape Lab. It's on the Shoreditch High Street. The selection of liquids, all the stuff that was produced in the UK was higher PG, and then you had an American liquid that I actually use that was all 80-20 or sorry 20-80 PG/VG. So yeah, the cloud chasing culture is certainly not a thing over there.
Oh really?
Alex?
Yeah.
Alex, are they using like childproof tops? What's their labeling like? Like that kind of stuff. What are they doing?
I didn't actually get to the store portion while it was still open, so I didn't actually get to see it. But the regulated mods are pretty standard over there. I think I may have been the only person in the room with a mechanical mod.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. Wow.
And I should put the link to the video series. The summit itself was actually very well done, and I kind of feel like they've had a lot that seems to be not the norm, but it seems to me that the advocates over there have a lot more opportunities to attend presentations like this. I know that I've followed Lorian on Twitter and seen her tweeting from public health type seminars where people are going to be talking about e-cigs. But I fully recommend that people check out the videos that came out of there. The speakers they had lined up were great, and Farsalinos gave a talk. There was a lawyer from Canada that gave a presentation, which was very interesting. I have to watch it again. I just remember thinking to myself, "Oh yeah, the Canadian guy. We need to hear from him." So yeah, there was a good lineup of speakers and some really good information, and I think some previews of one or two studies that they're finishing up that should be published within the next few months.
Okay.
And a lot of good discussion. The other thing to point out is that this was attended by a lot of public health people, and there was actually a guy from the American Heart Association there, and I just feel like he couldn't contain himself. He had to get the line about Gateway, and we don't know if it's safe. Like, somebody just had to bring that up, and of course it came from the American Heart Association. But something that somebody had pointed out was that I think last year there was some red faces and some shouting at some point because someone from public health had brought something up, and this year it was a lot more collegial and professional. But there were quite a few representatives from public health that showed up at this thing. So that was good, and I had told Oliver I think that something like this needs to come to the States. I would love to sit in a room with representatives from all the body parts groups.
Oh yeah.
From legislatures all over the country, federal legislators, and listen to presentations pretty much from both sides. I mean, if you want to weigh kind of the pro-vaping versus the policy type people that presented at this thing, there was obviously a lot more, there was more from the science and policy side that had good things to say about vaping. But one of the things that I applaud them for is that, this isn't just this isn't a big e-cig circle jerk. This is a legitimate, let's get together and talk about this kind of summit. And it's very tastefully done, and I think they probably could have made 2 days out of it. But they managed to get through the entire roster of speakers in time for the next event coming through.
So I know one of the things that you and I have talked about is some of the, and I don't want to, I'm trying not to completely say this in a negative manner. We've seen some of the FDA or body part sponsored summits where the information that comes from those is very cited, it's very polarized, and even to the point of we had seen early in some of the summits where when we would come forward and identify ourselves as e-cig advocates, that body parts people would actually stop talking and walk away. They just didn't even want to deal with us. You didn't see that there?
No, it really wouldn't be the place for it, to be honest. I feel like there was a genuine curiosity on both sides. I think there was some disappointment. I think Deborah Arnott had given a presentation. She's Ash. I think she's Ash UK.
Yep.
And her presentation was supposed to be about what was discussed at the WHO COP6. And she basically gave no new information. It was just very lukewarm, and nobody really cared. But she's one of those who, I think, in the very beginning was very adamantly against e-cigarettes, but has changed her position somewhat to be a little bit more open to the idea that promoting these products could be beneficial. And really,
that was very
again,
negative at first.
Again, what you hear from a lot of these people is, not that there really isn't a single person in that room that can say that vaping is just as dangerous as smoking, which is, it's just one of those facts that people need to understand when they're making policy. And I actually kind of accidentally ended up speaking with Alette. I'm sorry, I have to figure out who she's from. But she's one of the people she's working with the kind of task force that's involved with implementing the TPD. And I looked at her name tag and it said tobacco control. I said, "Oh, you're one of those." And she's like, "Yeah, I'm one of those." And I had a very friendly conversation with her in the morning.
Wow.
I wasn't completely awake yet, but she was actually she admitted, she was on the side of, yes, absolutely, these products are not they can't be as dangerous as smoking, and I think that policy should reflect that. However, she kind of feels that indoor vaping prohibitions are warranted, and she doesn't quite understand what she's being exposed to, if anything, but she is more on that side, which is fine. At least, it's good to hear from somebody in charge of implementing something horrible like the TPD that, the TPD is a little whack. So, yeah, it's just a different. I don't know if that's all of Europe. But it's just a different. It's just a different culture over there. I mean, when we talk about the groups here, a lot of these folks are working with a political agenda, and all of these body parts groups presentations that any of us have ever heard, it's really just it's almost as if they're just sort of reading it into the public record. They're producing this kind of scam piece about what I can't remember the last one that a bunch of us sort of listened in on, but it was supposed to be about how should you treat vaping in the workplace, and it was like an hour-long presentation, and they spent 45 minutes, more than 45 minutes, just rehashing the same crap about nicotine's a poison and it's fruity flavors and you don't know what's in it. And there was absolutely, the title of the piece didn't match anything about what they said, except for the last 5 minutes of it, which was just like, do what you want. So, yeah.
I really appreciate you giving us all the information on that, Alex. It sounds like it was a great experience for you, and it sounds like we may have some open doors to be able to talk to the guys over in the EU. Maybe we can share some of our passion and some of our ideas on keeping vapors engaged, and they can help us maybe get new presentations or new avenues to be able to talk to officials on a one-to-one basis without all the animosity.
Yeah, I will say all of them were very receptive to any advice that I was willing to give, and they are just genuinely sweet people, and we have a joke around here that we need to clone certain people in order to get things to happen, and that I feel privileged to have met with a good couple handfuls of people over there that really just need to be cloned and dispatched to the world to help the fight.
I know a few of those people are great, are very wonderful people, and I've had the pleasure of meeting some of them. Well, we're about out of time here. We've got about 3 minutes left here. I do want to thank everyone for joining us today. Maybe not the energy of our normal shows, a little bit of passion, but we had some good information we wanted to talk about, and some good ideas that we wanted to pass through you guys. We do appreciate you joining us every week. We hope to be able to bring you the show as often as we can. We will have a few interruptions in the February and March time frame. The demands that for the shows that we're going to are very high during that time frame. So maybe we'll have to get some other people to help us out. Any parting comments, Alex? You have to be quick.
I'm tracking down the link for all the e-cig Summit videos, and that's it.
Okay. Mondo?
You just remember you made a choice, stand up for it.
Thanks, Mondo. Ms. Robin?
Pretty much what Mondo said. Just, you made a choice, work at it, work together, work with us, and that's all.
Take some time through the week. See where you can make those touches to be able to make a difference. It doesn't take a lot of effort to move a mountain if everybody's pushing at the same time. Think about it. Thanks for joining us. Alex will drop that link in the room for the TPD videos. And we'll see you guys next week.
e-cig Summit.
Or the e-cig Summit. Sorry.